All right, so now we're moving on to part three, which is balance outliers. Basically, the cards that in this new meta with so many changes still seem to be a little bit out of line. And the first one we pretty much universally agreed on was the Wrecked Walker, and very specifically the interaction that it has with Once Bitten. So obviously Wrecked Walker is a very cheap unit that is extremely easy to combo with Once Bitten because it still has a pretty hefty amount of health for its cost, and it's basically everywhere. So I'll let you guys go ahead and take the lead on this one.
The value that comes from it is quite simple to understand. It being a 1-mana card, first of all, allows cycling, which gives value to both your master and all of your deck. Then, the fact that it doesn't attack means it can easily go get a bridge, while kiting around minions or absorbing attacks from units. And finally, the thing that makes it insanely good is, of course, Once Bitten, which is a 2-mana spell, so extremely cheap, which allows more cycling in 2 cards. And with the Wrecked Walker, creates a werewolf, which has been buffed and is now better than a warrior.
It
So
turns
you get your card
into a
better than a warrior.
it turns out into a 3 mana monster with I think 400 health and about 44 DPS
Extremely strong,
and
yeah.
an extremely high attack speed, so that DPS is very much consistent.
So both of those cards are cycling, extremely cheap. And finally, both of those cards can be played separately also. Once Bitten can be used elsewhere, Wreck Walker can be used elsewhere. So those two cards are simply too good.
And I think especially in 2v2, you see a lot if both pre-made players are going for control, it's very easy for you to just see them both having it because of this insane value that Palm was saying. If it's already great in one deck, you put it on 2 decks and you have even more advantage. In case just one of your opponents has it, it's too much. Like, just guaranteeing something on the bridge, it's huge. And the thing that I would say grabs my attention the most is that a year ago, or a bit more, I would say, we had the 1-drop changes, and where the point was exactly to avoid these. Like, even Screaming Scrat was like this at the time, just a 1-mana drop that walks straight into the bridge. It's like having these 1-mana cards that can give this insane amount of value is huge. And let's now keep in mind just all this control thing with a 1 Outlander card, which is the Wrecked Walker. But if you had Disruptor Puff, if you had Stint, if you have Plasma Marines, you have 5 super cheap cards because we have the one Smitten as well. 5 super cheap cards, basically almost all Outlander except the one Smitten, and you can do a lot with it. Now you get a lot of tech that you can use on Stint, you can use on other things. It's huge the value you get just from one little combo that's just gonna stack up much more than 3 mana value. Easily.
Yeah, the wolf cards overall as a whole have always been pretty problematic. Wolf Among Sheep very recently rebalanced because it was just getting completely out of control. You had Wolf Among Sheep or Zealots of the Burning Fist in every deck as your top end because they were just extremely explosive, reliable sources of damage that did way more than their cost would imply. And Once Bitten, obviously the biggest offender because it's a 2 mana wolf. Like, not only that, but a 2 mana wolf on something that doesn't really have much more value to give. And then suddenly for 2 mana, you turn it into something completely full health because it's not going to lose value because you play it on something with 1 health compared to something with 500 health. And, like, it's just like such an obvious source of mana cheating that's just waiting to be exploited, and well, Walker kind of just ran right into that one.
Yep, that's why we see it everywhere.
Okay, so what potential changes would we see with this combo?
Very hard to say. It's extremely strange that they decided to add a 1-mana card this late into the game after all of the nerf they had done previously to the 1-mana cards. It blew my mind that they added this. It's out of nowhere,
it's
and
kind of like a should have seen it coming scenario.
Usually you don't want to create exceptions, so I think like giving some cards some type of mechanic that just doesn't allow them to be a wolf, just doesn't stick well with me. So I think that's not an alternative.
Yeah,
I don't think nerfing wolves would also be another alternative in the sense that you would be nerfing too many cards. Like you'd be nerfing Howling Moon, you'd be nerfing Wolf Among Sheep, you'd be nerfing Lone Wolf. So it's like too many cards that get affected by that. I don't know. Like for example, maybe
yeah,
Wrecked
I
Walker.
see two
I don't know.
things
Like
here.
you cannot even nerf the Wrecked Walker. Like you cannot even go with the Groggy Wood option of giving it slow, because when it converts into a werewolf, it loses all those negative stats.
Good
So
point.
it's like,
Yeah,
what can you do about it,
one
right?
thing
Maybe
I would be interested in seeing, because normally what people do to counter the the wrecked wolf or whatever you want to call it, normally they play burst damage units. They play cleaver, they play assassin, they play things like that with one hit just get rid of it entirely before it transforms. So
that's for sure. That's something that not to fall
maybe
for.
reducing its maximum health would help more minions be able to do that. That would be one option. Another option that honestly seems pretty straightforward and simple would be just raise the mana cost on once bitten. Like put it to 3
Yeah,
so you don't just turn
No,
1 drops.
I don't
Okay.
think that's viable at all. At all. Once bitten is already very specific. Like we are seeing this happen a lot because of the Wrecked Walker. Like having this card be 3 mana, I think it would change it too much. For first, it's one more stat into Ascension if you want to go there. Which changing the mana cost on Ascension cards always needs to keep in mind how it's gonna affect the overall progress of Ascension. But even then, like if you say, but it's not using Ascension decks, that's fine. Like you are denying a lot of other combos. For example, Elite Swarmer with once beaten, it's a 4 mana combo. That's like on the sweet spot where it's like it's not busted, it's not weak. It's like it's acceptable, and you make once beaten 3, and you're not gonna see it. Now you're not gonna see it on Tantrum Throwers because there's no rage to pass. Same even if you had the previous Lost Legionnaires, you are probably gonna stop seeing it on the Elite Swarmer because it's already weird because you not always want that wolf, so it does not make up for it. And if you don't have a direct target for it, and you just want to use it on situational moments to turn
Yes.
around the trade of your units, it's not worth having a 3 mana spell on your deck just for that. Like there are other 3 mana spells you can have it. So I don't think increasing the mana cost would at all be the way to handle it.
Okay, so
Yeah, reducing the max health of the Wrecked Walker, disallowing it to become a wolf so easily, because right
That's
now requiring 100 damage to kill it instantly is pretty rough. It requires a lot of things and often requires
requires
a mana loss.
either a minion focused on burst damage or like a 7 drop. Something just completely out of proportion for something that so little mana was invested into. So yeah, I think that's probably a good way we can.
I guess it's like if we consider stealth, like those minions, the assassin stealth works. Like if you are 5 seconds out of combat, you go in Viz. Wrecked Walker could start with a very low HP threshold, like it starts with like 20 health, or well, not 20, 20 is nothing, but like it starts with a bit less health than it has right now. And then if there are no other units nearby for like 5 seconds, then it starts getting more health. But like what will this change? So it's a 1 mana that's gonna capture the bridge. Well, it's on your opponent's interest to recapture the bridge fast, so they will play into it. He will not regain health. If it gets you need once beaten it very fast, right? Because if you play it at the back to let it get health, and then once beaten it, you didn't get the bridge, so you're literally just paying for a wolf on your side. Again, not that much worth it. At least it's good for the 3 mana, but it's not giving you the insane play on the bridge, which is better. It's like more balanced. So like at least that's, and it's like a solution coming to the top of my mind. Like
Yeah,
that would
interesting idea.
stop. Like that would stop the way the interaction is going so strong right now, which is you play it, it gets on the bridge, you wolf it. Okay, no, you play it. If they have something on the bridge, they will kill it. Like it's gonna have some little health that it's gonna die. Like unless you are playing it into some plasmas or some other things. But in that case, you were smart. Like you outplayed it. Like it should just have very little health. so that 1 or 2 ticks and it dies. And so that if you once beaten it instantaneously, it's gonna transform before getting on the bridge, and there we go again, like the same as before. You get the 3-mana wolf on your side. Like that's fine. I guess the only problem is that if it has less than 50% health, it transforms instantaneously. Well, that's not really a problem. Well, like just 3-mana wolf, I guess. It's literally, yeah. I think that would be fine. Literally, it's a weaker version of the lone wolf. So I don't think that would be such a bad way of looking at it. But I guess it does mean you can instantaneously transform it once on the bridge. It's a very niche like interaction, and it's hard
I think
to
it's
handle
you need
it.
to deal with their max health rather than their base health.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, both. I mean, like it has the max health and it has like the health it starts, like that threshold. I think both could be
Yeah,
reduced to
that
the point where it has
that
very little.
mechanic where it starts at 100 and it goes down is also something you'd maybe have to look into, because if you reduce the health, but then that just means that it loses, like right now it's at 100 health and it needs to lose 25, either by just walking and wearing itself out or getting hit. So like maybe it would have to even be reworked on that level,
Sounds more like a buff,
because
to be honest. Allowing
yeah,
making it sure by yourself that it's a wolf would be a buff. What I think they need to do is
Exactly. Yeah. That's
combine you guys' ideas and reduce their max health. Maybe it starts at 20 health, max 20 health, not 20 out of 150. So this way it cannot become a wolf easily.
But
That's
yeah,
what
that
that
way it
that
can also
that
not be anything else. That way it cannot be anything else. Like if it only has 20 max health, you cannot use it to tank, you cannot use it to kite, you cannot use it to anything else. It's true that you don't want lots of uses for a 1-mana card, but I don't think just having 20 max health would do anything.
don't
yeah
don't
the
take
the
20 health as serious. I mean,
yeah
could
the
be 50 max
I
health.
know, but
yeah
like
the weird part is where like it has 150 but it starts at 100. Like why just get
That
rid of
was
that,
their
like that. I don't think
hot.
that serves any real practical purpose. Like I don't think somebody's gonna put a priestess behind this.
That was
So
their response to it having max health on the patch release. They hotfixed it to nerf it, but it wasn't enough.
it was the purpose. Like if it start at max health, then you had much more time to let it get on the bridge where you wanted on the bridge, and then transform it. If it already has less starting health, you need to be more immediate with it, and it is harder. But yeah, well, something needs to be done here. It's a tough spot. I don't think increasing Rectalker to 2 mana would also be such a great solution, unless then again you give it all health and maybe a bit more. It's something weird, but like it cannot stay a 3-mana combo that gives you all these benefits for sure.
yeah. So let me switch it up real quick. Just need to change it because we basically have things in categories for the following ones. Just add a slideshow. Add the directory. So now we're focusing on cards on specific flying units. So, Palm was the one mentioning this before for the most part, but a lot of cheaper flying units have lost a lot of their value, and mostly the ones that are getting use are cards like the ATG drone, the Harbinger, and Herald Amun. We're just gonna leave those in slideshow. But basically, like, flying units have to be just like this level of powerful to be relevant, because now that the small ones can't grab bridges and their annoying powers have really gone down, it's just like really throwing things out of balance for them specifically, because their purpose just isn't really there anymore. Palm, you were the one who chose these cards. Do you want to elaborate a little more?
Yeah, as you said, we barely see any low-cost flying units anymore because, of course, they lost their bridge capture ability and they die quite easily to range units. And with their increased cost from recent patches, such as on the bats and on the on the
Propeller
propeller
scrats.
scrats, their damage is completely pointless. They barely have any value. Like, what is the point at all to use them? There's barely any. The only one I would say is to pester Volko. But yes, you need a certain power on your flying units for them to be worth it at all. They need to be beefy. They have over 200 health, or for example, the Soul Stealer that you guys added earlier. They need to survive a fireball, for example. So you need those cards to really be powerful, and that means most of the other flying cards are barely see any play. That's something I don't really like, is seeing so few cards like that. So I'd say that those cards are the outliers because they're the only flying cards that I see are worth it. And most of them are worth it only because of their insane strong either DPS, horde control, or single target damage. All of it comes back to the game being focused on ground minions.
I think in 2v2 it's still something around this. Some changes, of course. I would say a Soul Stealer and the Razor Squadron are much more played in 2v2. The reason is the same. Is the overwhelming advantage these cards have over ground units. And Soul Stealer can clean up a lot, and as he gains so many stacks, he can be a huge threat. And Razor Squadron, it just it's huge DPS. It's all something to be fearful. The other ones aside of these would probably be Jing and Zhao, by how hard it is to control them and how hard it is to handle the way they interact with spells.
Yeah, Razor Squadron in particular, like I feel like it's a card that to a certain point it kind of balances itself. It does have that damage output, but it's damaging itself. It does have a low base HP value, so that card, like, you can do the Outlander cycling skill and treat it as any other, like ion grenade or stint or whatever you want to use your tech on. But I feel like that one is pretty okay. Also because, like, frankly, I don't see it played with tanks all that often. Like, you more often than I'd like to admit, just see it played by itself, and then it just goes to the other side of the map and just dies to the master tower. But these other ones that have very high HP values, you see 250, 250. ATG, we'll see it in a moment, but I think it's around that too, or maybe even higher. 225. Yep, there it is. But yeah, those ones just really, like, after getting into the habit that all flying units are useless, we don't need these anymore, then these show up and suddenly you may not really have too many counters to that, just because of the way the metagame has shifted so hard into, like, air units not being that big of a deal.
Very good.
I still think though that like some units, like to their interactions, can have like a very specific role. Like the Frost Feather Feeder Slow, it's something interesting. The Hugger, we were not mentioning the Hugger, but the Hugger I think is still played. Not as much as before, but like the curse can be good. The Zeppelin bomber was never very used, but like it can do a lot of things, and it was recently buffed. And I played it a bit, and it can still be quite interesting, like how all those mechanics. And if you are focused on ground units, having something on the air that just goes a straight line, just bombing everything, it's quite powerful. I think the ones that suffered the most were really the small, very very weak ones that had almost no other purpose outside of breach grabs, which is really just the bats and the propeller scrats. Dragon Whelps have some DPS, but no one ever played them for their huge DPS. Usually play them to answer air. So I think those were the most affected ones. Because, for example, Vulture Prime, you can still use it for the bazooka combo or other combos.
Yeah, targeting still reveals stealth units, for example. That's still very, very useful.
Although not in Vulture Prime, he does need to attack them first.
Okay, so they.
I think air units are something to discover, since the shift in a lot of meta around ground and range units being used less.
Yeah, personally, I still love Frost Feathers, but that's mostly because people aren't really that prepared for them. So they're going to be throwing out this, their Mardrids, their Colossi, these huge units, and then you just frostfeather them a couple of times. Their DPS goes way down, and suddenly they're a lot more manageable and things like that. But they're like, it's sort of like a full circle kind of effect, because like suddenly in my experience they're being good because people have kind of ignored and forgotten them, and not enough people are using aerial units. So it is a strange interaction, but we definitely do end up concluding that like the cheaper air units really just need to be retooled in some way to serve a purpose, because they've literally been slashed off the collection screen for most practical purposes.
Yeah, it sucks to see a large portion of the cards being forgotten about like that. I would like to see a few more.
What would you like even try doing about that?
The easiest thing is to either reduce cost or increase damage on the ones we never see.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to say,
I mean, if they don't capture bridges, propeller scrats could go back to 1 mana. If
exactly that kind of thing.
Like, although bats are annoying. I don't know how to deal with bats.
yeah,
like,
I
don't know how to deal like how they
do because they're just so erratic and so chaotic that the moment you buff them, everybody uses them, and it's just a mess. So, I mean, yeah, I think the mana cost part is interesting, because then they can fit into cycling strategies a little bit better, and then there's their purpose back all over again. Like, the problem with having like a lot of 1-drops was abusing them in cycling strategies, but if they can't,
now they don't do anything on bridges. Yeah,
if they can't capture bridges, then suddenly one of the bigger problems about them, that was the reason they had to rework puffs again, for example. Puffs can capture bridges, and they have added effects if they're ignored, so they had to do that. But since these small flying units can't capture bridges, like, maybe making them cheaper would be the solution, to not have to just give them more damage and suddenly forcing people to play ranged units with every tank, because if not, their tanks are going to get eaten up by extremely efficient mana for DPS units. So yeah, I think I like the idea of reduced cost for cycling purposes.
Like, a few ideas that have popped up in my mind. The reason scrats and bats get demolished is because they're extremely low health. They could gain stuff like stealth. They could gain the same avoidance as Jolo. I don't know, just little things that make them better at DPSing while not instantly dying to any ranged unit. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be more for like future cards in those categories. But yeah, stealth is a mechanic I'm very, very on the fence about, because like, you already see extremely uninteractive decks where people just put every single stealth card, play it on the bridge, and hope it goes face and hits 5 times. And if that happens enough times, they just win. So stealth is a mechanic I'd be a little bit on the fence about, but I would like to see that going on cards moving forward. Make them small, make them fragile, but give them some way to get reliable value.
Increase their number also could be possible.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps up this section. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the next category, which was, okay, hordes. Minion hordes, especially led by, just a moment, wait for it. There we go. Commander Azali. So this has been a strategy that's been cropping up a lot. I'd say it's a decent bit more predominant in 2v2, but I have seen 1v1 cases of it where Um, yeah, it's as basic as it sounds. You just plop the entire horde on the bridge. Since there's so many units, some of them fall on the bridge immediately. Instant shields, and that's annoying. It's pretty much the sum of it. And a
If we
lot of people are
consider,
using it.
I think if you consider how the spells easy to handle them were nerfed, it makes
Fogo,
sense
you
that
cut out,
even
sorry, I think.
I was saying if you consider how spells that can easily deal with them were nerfed, how spells that can easily deal with the Zali were also nerfed, and how you have very limited cards that as easily deal with these hordes, and those cards are probably a problem in itself as well. It goes to show how against everything else that not specific counters, Azali with hordes and all those shields is just going to do a lot. Shields give right, shields will pop one stack out of the Doom wheel, like of the Wheel of Doom, sorry, will completely deflect Blade Star, will stop damaging spells that just do one tick. There's a lot that shields are doing right now for a game, especially when we are focused on ground minions and minion to minion interaction. If one blocks the first incoming damage, that's a lot.
Yeah,
100%.
also the fact that like straight up like these cards are already efficient as they are. Like Scrat Horde is already 100 DPS as long as all the strats are alive. The skeletons will come back up in a second. Those are 9 skeletons with I believe 25 DPS. It's coming back around. But yeah, Scrat Horde 100 DPS, 12.5 times 9. Let's do that real quick. That's 112.5 DPS. So, like, those are cards that do have very efficient numbers as long as they're kept intact and just, like, so easily guaranteeing that they're going to be intact on, with a minion that's normally really, really hard to kill. And since it's central to the strategy, it's going to be really heavily protected. Like, it's just a compounding effect where, like, it just really demands hard counters, or if not, you're just going to lose to it. And it's one of those strategies that, like I was mentioning before, like, it's too easy. Like, for the results that it gives you, it's just too easy to do this, which means it's going to be overplayed. And we have what we see today, where it's.
Yeah, the Azali combo has been predominant in easy climbing from
Back from when, yeah.
from 3 years ago when I started playing. It was there, everyone was playing it. It's
Yeah,
extremely easy. As
zero
an
cost.
opponent, you do one slip up and suddenly you have 15 units on your face with no answer. Azali in herself is extremely strong. She's got a very strong ad, 150 damage, 65 DPS, 800 health. She is a strong unit for 8 mana on her own. The fact that there is no limit to the amount of shield she can give is also crazy. The fact that you only need one single tick on the bridge, then capture it, and boom, you get the shield is crazy. There's barely any interaction from the opponent, whereas while playing it, it's almost you don't put any thought in it. You play as Ali and then you continue playing as normal.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you if you
I
want.
think the best way to handle her, like I don't think targeting the cost would or the stats would be the way to go, because that's not the problem. As Palma was saying, she's a very solid unit for 8 mana. I think what needs to be targeted is the ability to give shields, and the best way to target is just give that a cooldown. Like you can do that from 30 to 30 seconds, or something like that. Because just doing that at every single bridge proc, it's extremely strong. And like you have your horde fighting on the your horde captures the bridge, your opponent plays something, your shielded units are fighting that on the bridge. You win the fight, you get the shields again, and you know you're gonna get the shields again. So you play like some sniper or some backline to make use of those shields. And if you know it's on a timer, and like we have any there's stuff for that. We see it with Avea. Avea does something similar from time to time. She gives shield to what's around her. Well, Azali is going to do something similar, but with a different timer and just globally. Because like you need timer on that. Just it's super strong. Otherwise, then yes, you need. I think otherwise it is necessary to increase the cost to 9 mana.
I
But
mean,
I
yeah,
think
it
that
makes
would just
sense.
be that would just destroy it too much.
Avea has a cooldown. Yeah, why not just put one on Azali that's a global effect and only costs 2 more mana? and gives significantly more DPS on a unit that doesn't damage itself, by the way. Another comparison I wanted to draw between Azali and other abilities in the game was King Puff. King Puff gets 2 tiny little circles in his arena where you have to place the minion there, and it's a maximum of 5 minions that get that buff. Like,
if we talk about that, I think a very good way to handle it is just you need to have 2 circles, because it has confused me a lot, and I know other players as well, because you play it on the circle, but it's not exactly on the puff, so the unit just goes by and doesn't capture. I think it needs to be clearly 2 circles, or the puff needs to be more perceptible. Like you have the area circle on which units that are inside that area get the buff, and you have the effect area where you need to touch to get the buff, period. Because right now it can be very strong, but it's just not clear. I think that's just clearly state where they get where they get the buff and where they need to touch the buff.
But yeah, the big problem with Azali is her endless potential with almost no limit. They could limit the amount of shield. They could add a cooldown, like we see in a lot of units like Armor of Light, where there is counterplay to that.
You could calculate the timings, yeah.
So,
and another thing, like, just about how Azali manipulates interactions, like, she also does kind of give free lasting bridge control, because, like, when units are fighting on bridges, you don't really want to take those bridges back, because they'll just recapture it and give all those shields all over again. So one strategy that some people, do end up having to bite the bullet in doing is ignore bridges. Because you don't want to give more shields, and then you have to focus on fighting shielded units without bridge control. Suddenly your opponent's perks are coming online quicker, and it's another advantage that just came out of the fact that Azali has this unlimited value.
Like, the biggest interaction you have against her is to not play and concede bridges. But finally, the actual counters to that, the downsides of Azali. Sometimes playing Azali doesn't work at all and you get obliterated. Sometimes your opponent plays perfectly with their AoE counters and everything goes well. I feel like Azali is too much of a polarized card, whereas you either dominate or get dominated.
Yeah, without much save from the person that plays Azali, like, at all. Yeah, but I still do think, like,
Azali either dominates or gets dominated. It goes both ways, sorry.
Yeah, I understood that, but yeah, it just does really feel that while the Azali player is just, like, putting units on the bridge, like, it's one of those many cases where it feels like as the defender you have to bend over backwards and outplay your opponent by, like, a factor of 3 to 5 to be able to cleanly win that interaction. And, like, yeah, it just doesn't feel fair. Like, in a perfect world, the most skill testing cards are also the most powerful, because you want cards to scale with a player's abilities. And, that does generate other things that we're not really going to get into, but, mainly you want the amount of effort that you have to put into certain things to be in a way proportional to their results, and not really the other way around. Where, like, just do this, it's easy. Like, you never want your game to get to that point, because, like, the people that put in more effort and more time learning other things and, more advanced combos and interaction, like, that just goes out the window the moment anybody can do something that overpowers them. Should that be it for this section?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to go on to the next section, which is going to be, in a way, about the counters to these hordes. But mainly, it's going to come in the way of anti-ground units. Up just a moment. Mainly these 3. First one is going to be Defenso Chopper. Second one is going to be Whirly Scrat, and the third is going to be Little Grenadier. So, now that the game has shied away from spells, basically, we're having a lot of things where, minion interactions happen, and they happen on the ground because flying units got nerfed too. So, those two things being slightly removed from the equation, suddenly the focus is on, what I said, ground units fighting it out, and things like Grenadier that were already pretty good but had some sort of you could poke holes in their ideal scenarios. Now it's not really that much of a thing, and these cards are just really getting value no matter what.
Yeah, so very quickly, these three options. The Grenadier itself is extremely low cost, so it helps cycling. There is barely any answer to it that is a positive trade. It always gets its value, very hard to deal with. It's even worse sometimes using a 3-mana spell to kill it. Whirly deals very good damage, good DPS, good single target, good AoE, good speed. Its damage threshold allows it to kill skeletons in one hit. Finally, Defenso is, of course, a defensive option against most ground units, allowing other DPS units to do their work.
Yeah, I think it's the Grenadier is just that solid backline, as Paul was saying, and the other two have the advantage that if you get them to sit on the bridge, they are going to be extremely annoying there, and they are not going to move, and they are going to be damaging everything. You can pair that up with lots of other cards. Defense in itself right now, it's a very huge spot on the meta, and it's really curious. The last time defense was heavily nerfed was in a season, was the season after werewolves were super strong. The other time where literally werewolves were super strong and Howling Moon was also changed and so on. And Defensive Chopper was nerfed. And it's the thing, and it's happening again now. And after it being nerfed without being buffed, and I think it's just Defensive is a very meta card. If you are in a meta where it's very prominent that most units that are used are going to hit you like melee attack, defense is going to be great. Like whatever they play, you play defense on the bridge, they play whatever melee unit they want. Defense is gonna stun them from time to time. It's gonna give you time to build up your mana to support it with spells, support it with backlines, all of that. It's just gonna give you that value. And I don't think it's because he's super strong or it's because he needs to deal less damage on the stun. I think it's really just other things are too used that make defense shine. And because if you put defense at 6 mana, it's just gonna be terrible. Like defense is not a card that right now needs to be 6 mana. The state of the game should not go so much into melee to melee interaction to the point where just defensive here, just swirly there. And right now it's happening a lot, especially in 2v2. If you are playing control, if you and your teammate are playing control, it's very likely that you'll both have either defense or worldly. In the two decks, you probably have one of these two in both, and then you have the other in one of the decks and something similar in the other. And that's how it goes. It's really not a healthy state when you have just these two prominent cards to just dominate and neutralize bridges. Before people would do that in statues. You put a statue is gonna neutralize your bridge, and then you play backlines to deal with it. Right now, no, because you have minion to minion interaction on the focus, so you just play these two, and that's it. Like bridges are neutral, they're gonna take damage, you're gonna be in a good position, and you're gonna get your mana value back.
Very good point that it's about the state of the game and not the cards themselves. So I hope they don't focus on nerfing the cards. I hope they focus on increasing the value elsewhere of diversifying about range and flying and spells and others. Not necessarily straight up nerf the two cards that are against the current meta.
Yeah, things about Defensive Chopper that I do want to comment on. First of all, it's extremely high potential for trading up and just absolutely neutralizing cards in your deck. Like, for example, you play a Last Stand, even if you split it, they just wait in that center point, right on the line. And if you don't have additional input, those 7 Legionnaires are just going to straight up die to that thing. And it's curious that they do that right as they nerf Stun Lancers to stun only once. which I don't know, like Sun Lancers being as small as they were so much easier to deal with in general. But like Defenso Chopper, there's very limited windows for meaningful counterplay. Like outside of Arcane Bolt, and even Arcane Bolt, it trades evenly, and you need to hit it for 50 damage first. Like that's for 50 to 150. I don't remember what
Yeah,
the
it's hard to
threshold
get rid
is
of.
right now. It's just very, very, very hard to get rid of. And the way it trades up like so powerfully and can just straight up neutralize cards. I'm thinking like Fergus, like Incubus, things like that normally just make an absolute mess of things. Like, I don't know, floodgate cards like this are always very dangerous because they tend to be cards that don't really have meaningful counterplay and just shut down. They just look at the other player and say no, which
A
is
good
just like
counterplay to it.
dangerous from a design perspective. Like I've always in my streams I was arguing a lot that Defenso Choppers kind of like served its purpose, and like cards that are like these level of hardcore floodgate effects that just completely neutralize a specific way of playing just don't really they don't really have a place in a game that you really are preaching that you want to make about interaction.
I do like that it encourages range DPS or stuff like Cleaver to murder it. Also, another idea is to ignore it. There are certain cards often that have that spotlight, such as Harbinger in two random 2v2s, for example, that demand a different approach. And I do like that there are cards that demand a different approach, and that not all cards is the exact same way. Capture Bridge, they beat each other up, and that's it. I love the fact that there are cards with special effects. The approach to those cards often is patience and a very precise and intricate approach.
Misdirection, oftentimes, for the specific case of like Harbinger.
Yes, oh, indeed. I like the different approach that specialty cards bring. The problem here is that this specialty card is applies to too many cards that are played. So I do
Yeah,
like the defense.
it's
So I wish the meta moved away from regular smaller-ish ground units.
Yeah, it's too focused on that. It's important to focus on that. Yeah, I don't think it's too good to heavily focus on that and then just lose track of all the other good aspects that and good interactions on Minion Masters.
yeah, diversification of minion types does seem like the way to go because, like, it's a Chopper has been a card that's been completely useless plenty of times before, and
Agreed.
like, yeah, it's sort of like maybe power creeping it is the way to go, but not necessarily even power creeping as much as just straight up diversifying the metagame so that there are more viable ways to win than just, big beefy melee units. That seems to be a bit of a trend.
Yeah, I think we focused a bit much on the defense, though, but it's a lot about the meta. Grenadier and Whirly, those two, well, their power comes also from the exact same deal. So all of these three cards are correct to be together.
Okay, and in one slightly more positive note, we're actually going to go to cards we wish we could see buffed. So let's get on to that right away. We started off with two of these. I picked one of them. Fogo picked the other. My choice was Annihilator. This guy can just not catch a break. I know he's a starter card, but oh man. And Fogo's pick was the Blade Star, one of the most recent incorporations into the game. Fogo, if you want to lead off with your thoughts on the card.
I've tried to play it a lot, and you can do really cool things, but it's extremely hard to get close to your 4-mana value. First, because in a minion meta that we have right now, nothing is gonna die to the point where you can just keep moving. Second, it does not bypass shields, so we versus all these Azali combos and Bannerman and so on, it's not gonna do anything. And then there's also the fact that the way it goes, like the way the spell is described is, it lasts 5 seconds and then it breaks, or until it leaves the arena. I've not seen a Blade Star be in the arena for like more than 3 seconds, if that much. I, I
Yeah,
really don't. And I've tried a lot, okay?
yeah,
And I
cause
don't. I think the card should be changed, and the design is there. It's just tweaking, like polishing the last parts. Like, why not literally say it just lasts always 4 seconds and it bounces off the walls of the arena? Cause
yes,
like and then
that
reduce the speed and of course reduce the speed. It's very cool that it's super fast. But like you reduce the speed a little, you reduce the timing, but it does not go off. So just like you throw it and it's gonna hit one spot, and like you can play much more with angles. Right now, the way it's working with those angles is really weird because like it feels like it's hitting a unit on the side, but then it gets deflected backwards, backward like to your master tower as if it's hitting a different angle. So, of course, the most ideal thing would probably to get a prediction line of the first um, two hits. Like you know, like, okay, look, it's gonna hit here, it's gonna go there, and so on, and then it does not calculate more. That would be very cool and it would help a lot. But I don't understand that in terms of calculations and designing that in the UI would be hard. So just like either way, even that would just be quality of life. I think to balance the card though, it would just be like less speed, less time, hit like bounces off the edges of the arena.
yeah,
I would love to see that.
that was my number one thought when I tried it on day one. Like I was super excited to try. You know, it seems skill testing. You know, you could make just these extremely pinball highlight reel type moments. But you know, then you throw it a couple of times, it hits something, and it just bounces back at you, and it's gone. So, yeah, I definitely agree that bouncing on the walls of the arena would be the number one way to make this card just so much better. So much better and
That's why
just
shields
so
do
much
nothing.
more
Like that's why the
interesting.
fact that there's the shields, you can just ignore it. Azali is still a problem as we talk about. Just the whole interaction with shields becomes much less awkward, and you still get like you don't need to worry about it, and it still has the different threat over Wheel of Doom, which is it will hit air units. So that's why I think it would be like a really good spot for it.
Yeah, and the fact that it would bounce off the walls of the arena means that even if your first angle gets deflected, like you don't just go foiled again. Like you see where it's going to bounce, and then maybe you can like align something or like some form of aggro or minion aggro that's happening. Like you can look forward to okay, what's my next option instead of just seeing it bounce off a shield and leave. Like it gives you like that opportunity to maybe see if it's gonna bounce like one or more times in your favor. Like it's not just, you know, oh, it got blocked, I lose. It did nothing for 4 mana. Palm, I heard you wanted to say something. Sorry if I cut you off earlier.
No, I'm all good. I do like the ideas that Fogo brought up about the Blade Star. Would add some funky decision making and playing it and mastering it. Would add to it. I think it will increase the quality of the card as a whole.
Yeah, and it just makes it interesting, like especially as a new card that should be like pushing the agenda for new ideas and new directions for the game. Like it definitely seems like it. As far as Annihilator, like I'll make it really simple. Like honestly, I told a streamer friend today, but like this guy, like I would not be completely against just putting the guy down to 4 mana. Like he's that like it's that hard for him to catch a break. Like for example, I know this is like looking at the current meta, but like Fire Imp in a meta like this, that guy does so much damage and kills so many things for exactly the same mana cost. Like Fire Imp dies to Pincer, but like still, if you compare like the potential value that a card like Fire Imp has compared to an Annihilator, it's just night and day.
I would like to see his attack to cooldown to be reduced, so I would like to see him attack
Exactly.
faster.
More attack speed.
He often gets overwhelmed due to that, so I would like, yeah, to see how agile he could be with more, like 1.8, maybe 1.7 instead of 2.1.
Yeah, that was literally the way I was thinking it was the best approach. Like he has the exact same range as Fire Imp, and what would differentiate him before that? What would probably justify this this extra cost is that it attacks air units.
Yeah, fire.
But as we talked before, you have less air units, and you rarely need the area damage on a single air unit. So at least get the guy to attack faster. I think that would justify still having him at 5 mana, because now you have less spells that completely shut him down. And there's also the thing that he does not get pincered as Fire Imp does. So you are paying one extra cost for a bit more DPS, guaranteeing at least you have an extra anti-air unit, and it is not as easily spelled as his only ground counterpart, which is the Fire Imp.
Yeah, also another differentiation would be that attack speed. You know, Fire Imp does a lot of damage, but it's a very slow animation that, you know, stronger players are going to be able to, you know, pull that aggro with a tank, with a small token, with something, and then come in with the DPS from another angle. You know, Annihilator wouldn't have that glaring weakness if he had a little bit more attack speed. So, are we all good on this part?
Yeah, as a general note, the things that I would like to see buffed are specialty cards, such rather than generic cards. I feel like it's way too much about single units that do nothing but attack and that's it. I would like to see more specialty, but of course, as a whole, that's very hard to.
Yeah, just adaptive and creative cards that you can't just throw into any deck and start winning.
Exactly.
You know,
That's what I feel gives flavor to the game.
Yeah, take deck building and creative gameplay to that whole new level. Definitely a good direction to go moving forward. Hey guys, Red Shade here. I know that I haven't really been streaming lately at all, and I wanted to give you guys a little insight into that. Basically, long story short, my GPU actually went out. Yeah, one of its memory units just completely collapsed. It was giving me a lot of restart errors and like actually visible problems with my display. So I've had to go ahead and get a new one. For those of you who aren't really looking at the market right now, that does mean really, really hefty investment. Most of them are like double the price, if not more. So that's definitely something that I've been saving up for. The way to help me with that, though, there's actually plenty of ways here. If you guys go over to my link tree, I'll be sure to add the link below. You guys can find all sorts of useful links here. You can find direct access to that Twitch channel, social media, Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and also a very neat integration here straight to the merch store. You know, as you see there, over 290 products, huge assortment. You guys can definitely take a look at that. Best bang for your buck way for you guys to support my content and get some high quality merch in return. You know, it's not going to be just that straight up throwing money at me. You know, you're gonna get something pretty sweet back, and I'm always looking for new designs, new products, new things to add and offer you guys. And there's even the option to support directly if you guys were so inclined, but the big ones are definitely going to be the Twitch integration and the merch store, so be sure to check that out. Definitely give it a look. I'll promise you it's worth your time. And that's probably going to be it for now. Stay awesome, guys, and I hope to see you next time.